talked about, because we're talking about the here and now, there's a chance that Shedeur Sanders is the starting quarterback of this team exactly a year from now.
You are the first person I've ever heard say that. You're the first person.
You ain't gotta watch out.
Like, listen. I forgot what it feels like.
Lay that out for us. What's the process? Or what's the plan?
Well, I mean, the process is it's clearly not the guy it is now, right? And you're going to go in and you're going to have, let's say, pick 5 and pick 15, right? You need tackle, you need receiver, you need all these other things. If you think Shedeur can play and you think Shedeur is going to use the offseason to get better, then you draft another quarterback in the 3rd round and you go forward with those 2 guys, and then you sit and wait on 27.
We do a deal with him.
You got 2 quarterbacks on rookie contracts at that time.
Right. The way out of this is for Shedeur Sanders to be Brock Purdy. Comes out of nowhere and makes no money, so you can spend it other places and push money forward and get rid. That's the way out of it.
Well, it all depends on who is the GM and head coach.
For sure.
And I've talked with Ken and Anthony for the past 6-7 games that I thought Shedeur has done enough to at least earn an opportunity to either compete or be on paper QB1 going into 2026. And you saw it in the first half, and you could see when they're on schedule and he's confident in throwing the ball where it needs to be when it's supposed to be. He can be a game changer and a quality quarterback.
Former Cleveland Browns player just went on the record and said what the entire organization has been afraid to admit publicly. This isn't speculation. This isn't wishful thinking from fans desperate for hope after years of quarterback disasters. This is a man who wore the orange and brown, who blocked for quarterbacks in this league, who understands exactly what it takes to build a winner in Cleveland, telling the world that Shedeur Sanders is the...
I'm not gonna lie, I felt very relaxed. And half of that comes from preparing, studying, and knowing I got God on my side. So throughout all that, I had no worries. I didn't feel nervous or anything before the game because, he took all my worries and everything away.
Shedeur, just how do you summarize this performance? How do you feel like you're starting to be went for you?
I enjoyed it.
Real deal. John Greco, former Browns offensive lineman, was asked point blank whether Shedeur Sanders should be the starting quarterback for Cleveland going into 2026. His answer sent shockwaves through the entire NFL community. He didn't hesitate. He didn't give some corporate, safe, non-committal response. He looked at the evidence, looked at the film, and delivered a verdict that changes everything. Shedeur Sanders has done enough to at least earn an opportunity to either compete or be on paper QB1 going into 2026. QB1, let that sink in for a moment. Not backup, not developmental project, not the guy holding a clipboard while management searches for someone better. The starting...
You draft around the quarterback and see what it looks like. Now that you have a pick that is probably going to be outside the top 5, you're lucky to get in the top 5 now with that win. Maybe you do, 4th or 5th, but you're not getting a quarterback unless you trade up. And I don't think you should anyway. So draft what you desperately need, which is linemen and receivers. Deshaun Watson's your backup, okay? Fine. Let that be the case next year. See what Shedeur can do with a better supporting cast. If it doesn't look good, okay, take your quarterback in 27, 28. But I bet you it's going to look better. It's looked decent this year with nobody blocking for him and no run game. And like his past 3 or 4 starts, our leading rusher is either Shedeur or today it's Dylan Sampson who has 27 yards rushing.
Quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, and Greco wasn't finished. What he said next laid out the entire billion-dollar blueprint for how this franchise can finally climb out of the darkness and into legitimate contention.
Let's welcome in John Greco on the Fan Hotline. John, good morning to you. Has Shedeur done enough to start in 2026 for you?
Hey, guys, good morning. I said that I thought he did a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to maintain that opinion. And there's a reason why. I've been saying it the past several weeks on your show that I don't think that I've seen enough to where I think that they can put some pieces around him and he can be successful.
But before we break down exactly what Greco revealed and why it matters, you need to understand who this man is and why his words carry more weight than any random analyst giving hot takes for clicks. John?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because obviously Coach Stefanski's, behind the scenes and he's getting everybody prepared for the game. But I think that speaks to the leadership in the locker room and guys like Joel, guys like Miles, the way that the captains, the leaders that are speaking in the rooms when the coaches aren't around and saying, I've been in some of those conversations where, and look, I've been in those conversations and then we've still fallen flat and haven't gotten the job done. So
John Greco isn't some media personality who watches football from a comfortable studio and pretends to know what happens in the trenches. This is a man who played offensive line in the NFL. He protected quarterbacks. He felt the pressure of a collapsing pocket. He knows what it looks like when a quarterback has it and what it looks like when someone is simply surviving. He played for the Cleveland Browns organization. He understands the culture, the expectations, the dysfunction, and what it takes to overcome all of it. So when a media host asked Greco directly whether Shedeur Sanders should be plan A for this team going into 2026 and how the Browns should construct their quarterback room around him, Greco's response was crystal clear. Well, it all depends on who is the GM and head coach. I've talked with the guys for the past 6-7 games that I thought Shedeur has done enough to at least earn an opportunity to either compete or be on paper QB1 going into 2026. And you saw it in the first half against Buffalo. You can see when they're on schedule and he's confident throwing the ball where it needs to be when it's supposed to be. He can be a game changer and a quality quarterback. A game changer, a quality quarterback. Those aren't throwaway compliments from a man trying to be polite. That's a former NFL player who has studied the film, watched Shedeur operate under impossible circumstances, and come to the conclusion that this fifth-round rookie has franchise quarterback potential. But here's where Greco dropped the most important statement of the entire interview, the one that should be plastered on every wall inside the Browns facility. I've seen enough from Shedeur to where if they build around him, they can have team success and compete in this division and be a playoff team. If they build around him, that's the key phrase that unlocks everything. John Greco is telling the Cleveland Browns organization exactly what they need to do. Stop looking for the next quarterback. Stop obsessing over whether they should trade up in the draft for Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore. Stop trying to find a savior when you already have one on your roster making less than $1 million per year. You already have your quarterback. Now build around him. And this is where the billion-dollar math becomes absolutely fascinating, because Greco didn't just confirm that Shedeur should be the guy. He laid out the entire blueprint for how the Browns can construct a Super Bowl contender around a quarterback on a fifth-round rookie contract. Think about what Cleveland has at their disposal right now. 2 first-round draft picks, a quarterback costing approximately $900,000 per year, $80 million in dead cap space from Deshaun Watson that begins freeing up in 2027, a core group of rookie defenders who have been playing at an elite level all season long, and the ability to completely
John, I need to know if I'm being overcritical on a specific play from Sunday's game. Shedeur's second interception. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm putting it like 99% on Shedeur because you can't throw back across the other side of the field and lay one, 5 yards short. But if I take umbrage with Jerry Jeudy's effort on that play to basically act as a defensive back instead of just wait for the DB to come down with it and make the tackle after, am I being overcritical of Jerry Jeudy?
Tool the offensive line and receiving core through the draft and free agency. Greco talked about it specifically. He said they have so much draft capital that if they really fall in love with one of the top quarterbacks, they're going to go get him. But they do have 2 first-round picks, and they can get 2 quality players on either side of the ball or the same side of the ball. But here's the thing Greco made abundantly clear. They don't need to use those picks on a quarterback. He said he thinks they can probably get away with rolling with Shedeur Sanders and have team success if they reshape and retool the offense while continuing to build the defense. Get away with rolling with Shedeur Sanders. That's not getting away with anything. That's making the smartest decision this franchise has made in decades. That's recognizing value when it's staring you directly in the face instead of chasing the next shiny object. Look at what the Browns can accomplish with those 2 first-round picks if they commit to Shedeur Sanders as their franchise quarterback. Pick number 1 goes toward an elite offensive tackle to protect Shedeur's blind side and replace the disaster that has been the current offensive line situation. Greco, as a former offensive lineman, understands better than anyone what it means to have protection break down play after play. He's watched Shedeur operate behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL and still make plays. Imagine what happens when you give him actual time in the pocket. Pick number 2 goes toward a dynamic wide receiver who can actually win contested catches and give Shedeur a true number 1 target. Because right now, Greco pointed out the obvious. Shedeur isn't throwing to Jamar Chase or Puka Nacua or Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have a guy that when in doubt you throw the ball up, and he's just going to go make a play no matter how many defenders are in coverage. He's trying to make plays with Jerry Jeudy, who shows up one week and disappears the next, and a bunch of practice squad receivers who wouldn't start on most NFL rosters. And despite all of that, he's still flashing the ability to be a franchise quarterback. Then in rounds 2 through 4, you load up on offensive line depth, more receivers, and defensive pieces to complement my...
Final thing for me, John, you talked about Kevin sort of coming off in his press conferences as a guy that either knows he's totally safe or knows the end is near. If this thing ends with Jimmy Haslam deciding Kevin's the one fired, Andrew Berry, you get to stay and sort of see this thing through, is that fair? Like, is that the right approach? Because to me, it feels like there's so much wrong with this team beyond just some of the on-field stuff that's probably gone wrong for Kevin this year.
Myles Garrett and the young core of defenders who have been playing their hearts out all season despite a losing record. That's $1 billion plan. That's how you build a Super Bowl contender in 2 years when you have an elite quarterback on a rookie deal. It's the same formula that turned Brock Purdy into an MVP candidate and the San Francisco 49ers into perennial Super Bowl threats. And Greco made that exact comparison. He said the way out of this mess is for Shedeur Sanders to be Brock Purdy. Comes out of nowhere, makes no money, so you can spend it other places and push money forward. That's the way out of this. The Purdy model works because when your quarterback costs less than most backup tight ends, you can allocate resources everywhere else. Elite offensive line, affordable, star receivers, within budget, dominant defense, absolutely possible. The 49ers proved this strategy creates championship-caliber rosters. The Browns have the same opportunity sitting right in front of them. But let's talk about what Shedeur has actually shown on the field, because John Greco didn't just make these statements based on potential. He based them on performance he's witnessed with his own eyes. Against Buffalo, Greco was particularly impressed with how Shedeur used his legs. The way he was using his legs against Buffalo really impressed me, Greco said. And that's not a small thing coming from an offensive lineman who understands what happens when protection breaks down and a quarterback needs to create on his own. In Shedeur's recent starts, there's been a fascinating trend. The leading rusher for the Cleveland Browns has either been Shedeur Sanders himself or someone like Dylan Sampson with just 27 yards. That tells you everything about the state of this offense. There is no run game. The offensive line cannot create running lanes. Despite all of that, Shedeur is finding ways to move the chains and keep the team competitive. Greco addressed one of Shedeur's interceptions against the Steelers, and his analysis revealed something critical about how this coaching staff has been setting their rookie quarterback up for failure. The play in itself was puzzling to me, Greco explained. It was an 8-man protection. You had the 5 offensive linemen and then a tight end or 2 backs. There were 8 guys protecting and 4 Steelers pass rushers. 8 guys protecting, 4 guys rushing. That means there were a lot of defenders in coverage and nowhere for Shedeur to throw the ball. Think about that for a moment. The Browns called a play designed for maximum protection against an expected all-out blitz. But when the Steelers didn't blitz, Shedeur was left trying to find an open receiver against 7 or 8 defenders in coverage with nowhere to throw. That's not a quarterback making a bad decision. That's a play designed putting a rookie in an impossible situation. But Greco's conclusion wasn't criticism. It was perspective. He said Shedeur just has to continue to improve in that area and making unnecessary mistakes because it's going to only help him in the long run. Continue to improve. That's what you say about a young quarterback you believe in. That's what you say about someone you see as a franchise cornerstone, not a placeholder until someone better comes along. Now here's where the situation gets complicated, and Greco was honest about the uncertainty facing this organization. When asked about Shedeur being the plan for 2026, Greco acknowledged that it all depends on who is the GM and head coach. And that's the terrifying reality for Browns fans who have watched this franchise make baffling decisions for decades. Greco shared his experience from being on teams where ownership fired the coach but retained the GM, or vice versa. His conclusion was definitive. It's got to be both or none. Both or none. That's the answer that Jimmy Haslam needs to hear. You cannot fire Kevin Stefanski but keep Andrew Berry, or fire Berry but keep Stefanski and expect alignment. You'll have a GM whose fingerprints are all over the roster trying to work with a new head coach who wants to implement his own vision. Or you'll have a coach inheriting players he didn't choose, trying to make them fit a system they weren't built for. Greco explained the problem clearly. When you have a guy that's still there, and you still have the GM's mark on the team, then the new head coach comes in and wants to put his spin on it. Are they automatically aligned, or do they have to be forced to be aligned on their vision for the locker room and the team and the direction the team needs to go? If Shedeur Sanders is part of Andrew Berry's vision, which Greco just confirmed he should be, then any new head coach better be completely on board with building around him. Because if the new coach comes in wanting to draft his own quarterback, wanting to start fresh, wanting to put his stamp on the most important position in football, you're going to have the same dysfunction that has plagued this franchise for years. Greco also addressed the cultural impact of recent wins, and his honesty was refreshing even if it wasn't what fans wanted to hear. When asked if beating Pittsburgh could be a culture-changing win, Greco said he doesn't know how much it does to flip culture or instill culture because of the simple fact that there's going to be a roster facelift. He's right. A lot of faces in that locker room are going to be different next year. The offensive line room will look different. The receivers are probably going to look different. Who knows if the coaching staff will even be there? But here's what Greco said will remain. The core group of rookies that have contributed and been terrific players this year. They're going to be here. That's your foundation. That's your culture. That's the group of young players who are going to define what the Cleveland Browns look like for the next decade. And at the center of it all should be Shedeur Sanders. Greco talked about leadership being the reason the Browns have continued to compete despite their record. He said it speaks to the leadership in the locker room. Guys like Joel Bitonio, guys like Myles Garrett, the captains and leaders speaking in the rooms when the coaches aren't around. But Shedeur has been showing that same leadership, despite being put in impossible situations by his coaching staff, despite playing behind the worst offensive line in football, despite losing key targets to injury. Despite all of it, he's maintained his composure, made plays, and kept fighting. In his own words after a strong performance, Shedeur said he felt very relaxed. Half of that comes from preparing, studying, and knowing he has God on his side. He said he had no worries, didn't feel nervous before the game because all his worries were taken away. That's the mentality of a franchise quarterback. That's the composure you cannot teach. That's what separates players who crumble under pressure from players who rise to meet it. Now, here's the fear that keeps Browns fans awake at night. Greco acknowledged that the Browns have so much draft capital that if they really fall in love with one of the top quarterbacks, they're going to go get him. And that's the nightmare scenario. That's what happens when Jimmy Haslam ignores everything John Greco just said, when ownership ignores Shedeur's performance. When they ignore the financial advantage of having him on a rookie deal, when they ignore the fact that he's already proven he can compete in this division, and they draft someone else because they feel like they have to draft a quarterback high in the first round. John Greco is telling them that would be a massive mistake. The evidence is telling them that would be a massive mistake. Every piece of logic and strategy is telling them that would be a massive mistake. The blueprint is clear. Use those 2 first-round picks on an elite offensive tackle and a dominant receiver. Retool the offensive line. Continue building the defense. And put your franchise quarterback on a rookie contract at the center of everything. That's the billion-dollar plan. It's documented. It's confirmed by a former Browns player who knows this organization inside and out. And Shedeur Sanders is at the center of it all. The question now is whether the Cleveland Browns are smart enough to listen. Whether Jimmy Haslam can resist the urge to chase another shiny object. Whether the new leadership, whoever that may be, will recognize what they already have instead of blowing it all up for a quarterback who might not be any better than the one already on the roster. John Greco put his reputation on the line with these statements. He said what needed to be said. He confirmed what anyone watching with clear eyes already knows. Shedeur Sanders is the future of the Cleveland Browns. The billion-dollar plan isn't some fantasy dreamed up by desperate fans. It's real, it's achievable, and it starts with committing to the quarterback who has already proven he belongs. The only question remaining is whether Cleveland will finally make the right decision. After decades of quarterback disasters, after the Deshaun Watson catastrophe, after all the pain and frustration, the answer is right in front of them. Shedeur Sanders, 5th-round pick, $900,000 per year. Franchise quarterback potential. This is the moment. This is the opportunity. This is the billion-dollar plan that could finally change everything for the Cleveland Browns. The league is watching, the fans are waiting, and Shedeur Sanders is ready. Let's ride with number 2.